The glowing screen of her phone illuminated Jessica Parker's tired face as her trembling fingers typed out the message. "I can't do this anymore. The baby is coming and I'm all alone." She pressed send before she could change her mind, then tossed her phone onto the passenger seat. The late October rain pelted against her windshield as she navigated the dark streets of Boston, each contraction growing stronger than the last. Jessica was 28, single, and about to become a mother. The father of her child had disappeared months ago, leaving her with nothing but empty promises and a broken heart. What Jessica didn't realize was that in her panic and pain, she had sent the message to the wrong Michael. Instead of reaching her unreliable ex-boyfriend, Michael Donovan, the desperate text had gone to Alessandro Marchetti, the intimidating owner of Marchetti Publishing, where she worked as a junior editor. She had saved his contact information after a company-wide email about quarterly goals, never imagining she would accidentally message him during the most vulnerable moment of her life. Alessandro Marchetti was reviewing accounts in his office when his phone buzzed. The 40-year-old sat in a room that smelled of old leather and faintly of cigars, the amber desk lamp casting long shadows across dark wood paneling. He frowned at the unfamiliar number in the startling message. He recognized the name. Jessica Parker, a sharp editor who had joined the company 8 months ago. He had noticed her work, her dedication. They had exchanged fewer than a dozen words in person. He had no idea she was pregnant, much less about to give birth. He stared at the message, unsure how to respond or if he should respond at all. This wasn't his concern. But something about those words, the raw desperation, bothered him in a way he couldn't dismiss. Meanwhile, Jessica pulled into the hospital parking lot just as another contraction hit, nearly doubling her over the steering wheel. She grabbed her hastily packed overnight bag and hurried through the rain toward the emergency entrance, not bothering to check if her ex had responded. It didn't matter anymore. She had stopped expecting Michael Donovan to step up months ago. The hospital staff rushed Jessica to the maternity ward, her labor progressing faster than expected for a first-time mother. Between contractions, she managed to give the intake nurse her information. "Emergency contact?" the nurse asked. Jessica hesitated. Her parents lived in Arizona and wouldn't arrive until tomorrow. Her closest friend was out of the country on her honeymoon. "There's no one," Jessica admitted, tears mixing with sweat on her face. The nurse gave her a sympathetic pat on the shoulder and continued with the admission process. Back in his office, Alessandro Marchetti couldn't shake the troubling message from his mind. Something about it bothered him. As someone who controlled significant interests in Boston, he prided himself on maintaining distance. But this felt different. This wasn't business. This was a person in crisis. After 20 minutes of internal debate, he texted back, "Everything all right? Need help?" When no response came, his concern grew. On instinct, he called Lucia, his right hand who handled the publishing operation. She was still working, as she often did. "Lucia, Jessica Parker from editing. What do you know?" "Bright editor, came highly recommended. Keeps to herself, but her work is exceptional," Lucia replied without hesitation. "Why? Is she pregnant?" There was a pause. "Yes, due very soon, I believe. People have been collecting for a gift. Problem?" Alessandro explained the mysterious text. "She mentioned being alone and the baby coming." "That doesn't sound good," Lucia agreed. "Want me to handle it?" "No, send me a list of hospitals within 20 miles. If she's in labor, she's likely at one of them." As Alessandro drove through the rain-slicked streets in his black Maserati, Jessica was fighting through the final stages of labor. After 6 grueling hours, the cry of a healthy baby girl filled the delivery room. "She's perfect," the doctor announced, placing the squirming newborn on Jessica's chest. Exhausted but overwhelmed with love, Jessica stared into her daughter's face. "Hello, Lily," she whispered, the name she had chosen months ago. While Jessica was meeting her daughter for the first time, Alessandro Marchetti was at the 4th hospital on his list, Boston Memorial. "Jessica Parker," he said to the receptionist, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Where is she?" The receptionist checked her computer. "Miss Parker was admitted earlier this evening. She's in the maternity ward." She looked up with a smile. "Congratulations. It appears she delivered a healthy baby girl about 30 minutes ago." Alessandro's expression didn't change. What room? Room 304, but visiting hours are over except for immediate family, the receptionist said. Alessandro straightened his already perfect tie. I'm the contact, he said, the statement delivered as fact rather than request. The receptionist nodded and buzzed him through. Standing outside room 304, Alessandro hesitated. What was he doing here? This woman was practically a stranger. He had crossed lines and inserted himself into an intensely private situation. He was about to turn away when he heard a soft cry from inside the room. Not a baby's cry, but a woman's muffled sob. Before he could reconsider, Alessandro knocked gently on the door. After a moment, a tired voice called, "Come in." Jessica looked up, expecting a nurse, and froze in shock when Alessandro Marchetti stepped into her hospital room. Her hair was a mess, her face pale with exhaustion, and her eyes red from crying. The baby was sleeping in a clear bassinet beside her bed. "Mr. Marchetti," Jessica's voice was barely audible. "What are you doing here?" Alessandro stood by the door, his tall frame making the small room feel smaller. "You sent me a text earlier. I think it was meant for someone else. You didn't respond." I was concerned. Jessica's eyes widened as realization dawned. "Oh my God," she whispered, mortification washing over her. "I'm so sorry. I meant to text my ex." "Figured as much," Alessandro said, his voice gentler than it ever was at the office. "You all right? Someone I can call?" Jessica looked away, embarrassment giving way to another wave of sadness. "No, there's no one. My parents are flying in tomorrow, but—" Her voice trailed off. An uncomfortable silence filled the room until a small whimper came from the bassinet. Jessica reached for her daughter, wincing slightly from the movement. "May I?" Alessandro asked, gesturing toward the bassinet. After Jessica's surprised nod, he carefully lifted the newborn and handed her to her mother. The tenderness in his movements was unexpected from a man known for his formidable reputation. "She's beautiful," Alessandro said quietly. "What's her name?" "Lily," Jessica replied, watching her boss with confusion. "Lily Grace Parker." Alessandro nodded, seeming to make a decision. "Miss Parker, Jessica, I know this is unusual, but would you allow me to help? Not as your employer, but as someone who—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "No one should be alone. Not like this." Jessica stared at him, trying to reconcile this compassionate man with the intimidating figure she had glimpsed from afar. Before she could respond, a nurse entered the room. "Oh, you must be the father," the nurse said cheerfully to Alessandro. "The hospital needs some information for the birth certificate." Jessica opened her mouth to correct the misunderstanding, but Alessandro caught her eye with a look that somehow conveyed both question and reassurance. In that moment, something shifted between them. An unspoken agreement, a bridge across the chasm of their different worlds. Neither of them could have predicted how that mistaken text would change everything, setting in motion events that would intertwine their lives in ways neither had imagined possible. The following morning, Jessica woke to the soft sounds of her daughter's breathing. For a moment, she wondered if Alessandro Marchetti's unexpected visit had been a dream, a bizarre hallucination brought on by exhaustion and hormones. But then she noticed the large arrangement of pink and white flowers on the windowsill that hadn't been there before, along with a small teddy bear. The card simply said, "Call if you need anything, AM," followed by a personal cell phone number. Jessica sank back against her pillows, mortification washing over her again. Of all the people to accidentally text during labor, she had messaged Alessandro Marchetti, a man whose name carried weight in Boston, whose reputation preceded him into every room. She had only interacted with him directly once, during her initial interview, when he had unexpectedly appeared to ask a few pointed questions about her editorial philosophy. Since then, she had admired him from afar, impressed by his quiet authority and the respect he commanded. Her phone buzzed with a text from her parents. Their flight would land in 3 hours. Jessica felt a wave of relief knowing they would be with her soon, helping her navigate these first overwhelming days of motherhood. She hadn't told them about Michael Donovan's abandonment, instead letting them believe the relationship had simply ended. The truth was too painful, too humiliating to share. That he had coldly informed her he wasn't father material and suggested she take care of the problem before disappearing from her life completely. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. A nurse entered, followed by Dr. Warner, who had delivered Lily. "Good morning, new mama," Dr. Warner said warmly. "How are you feeling today?" "Sore, tired, overwhelmed," Jessica admitted. "But good." Dr. Warner checked Jessica's vital signs and examined the incision from the emergency C-section they had performed when Lily's heart rate had suddenly dropped during the final stages of labor. "Everything looks good, but I'm concerned about your blood pressure. It's still elevated," Dr. Warner said. "I'd like to keep you an extra day for monitoring, just to be safe." Jessica nodded, trying to hide her anxiety. Another day in the hospital meant additional costs her insurance might not cover, but her daughter's health came first. "Your husband seemed very concerned last night," the doctor continued. "He asked about postpartum care and what to expect in these first weeks. It's wonderful to see such involvement." Jessica opened her mouth to correct the misunderstanding, but hesitated. The thought of explaining the complicated truth was exhausting. Before she could respond, her phone rang, her mother calling from a taxi from the airport. After the doctor left, Jessica tried to feed Lily, struggling to get her to latch properly. Tears of frustration were streaming down her face when another knock came at the door. Jessica hurriedly wiped her eyes. "Come in." Alessandro Marchetti stood in the doorway, looking different than she had ever seen him. Still in dark clothing, but a cashmere sweater rather than his usual suit. He carried a large gift bag and what appeared to be a takeout container. "Hope I'm not intruding," he said, his voice carrying that same careful gentleness from last night. "Brought you some real food. Hospital food's no good." Jessica stared at him, acutely aware of her disheveled appearance and the tears still damp on her cheeks. "You didn't have to do that." Alessandro set the food on the rolling table and moved it toward her bed. "Just soup and a sandwich. Nothing fancy." He glanced at Lily, who was still fussing. "Everything all right?" Jessica felt her face flush with embarrassment. "I'm having trouble. She won't—" Fresh tears threatened. To her surprise, Alessandro didn't look uncomfortable or flee the room. Instead, he calmly took a seat in the visitor's chair. "My sister has 3 children. She struggled with feeding too, especially with her first." Jessica looked at him in disbelief. This was not a conversation she had ever imagined having with her boss. "The consultant isn't available until this afternoon," she managed. Alessandro pulled out his phone. "Let me call my sister. She might have advice." Before Jessica could protest, he was speaking in rapid Italian, his voice taking on a warmer tone than she had ever heard. After a brief conversation, he turned back to Jessica. "She suggests trying a different position. May I?" He held out his hands for Lily. Something about his calm confidence made Jessica hand over her daughter. Alessandro carefully cradled Lily, then demonstrated the hold. "Like this, tucked under your arm, her feet toward your back, head supported in your hand." Jessica followed his instructions, adjusting until Lily was positioned correctly. To her amazement, Lily latched immediately. "It worked," she whispered, looking up at Alessandro with gratitude. Alessandro smiled slightly, a rare expression that softened his usually serious face. "My sister will be pleased." He turned away slightly, giving Jessica privacy. "Mr. Marchetti," Jessica began hesitantly. "Alessandro," he interrupted. "We're past formalities now." Jessica nodded. "Alessandro, I want to apologize again for the text, and thank you for coming last night. That was unexpected." Alessandro was quiet for a moment. "We all need help sometimes, even those of us used to handling everything alone." Something in his tone suggested he was speaking from experience. "Still, you're my boss. This isn't exactly in your job description." Alessandro leaned forward slightly. "Right now, I'm just someone helping someone. The company doesn't matter here." Jessica studied him, wondering about the man behind the formidable reputation. "Why did you really come last night? You could have just called the hospital to check." Alessandro seemed to consider his answer carefully. "Your message said you were alone. Yosh, no one should be alone during something like that." He paused. "And perhaps I understand more than you might think about facing important moments without support." Before Jessica could ask what he meant, the door opened. An older couple rushed in, her parents, Alan and Barbara Parker, having arrived earlier than expected. "Jessie," her mother exclaimed, hurrying to the bedside. She stopped short when she noticed Alessandro. "Oh, I'm sorry, we didn't realize you had a visitor." Alessandro stood, extending his hand with practiced courtesy. "Alessandro Marchetti, I work with Jessica." Barbara shook his hand, confusion evident on her face. Nice to meet you. I'm Barbara, Jessica's mother, and this is her father, Alan. An awkward silence fell over the room. Jessica could see the questions forming in her mother's eyes. Why was Jessica's boss visiting her in the hospital? Why had the nurses pointed them here saying her husband was with her? Alessandro brought me lunch, Jessica explained weakly, and helped with a feeding issue. Alan's eyebrows shot up. That's very kind of you, Mr. Marchetti. Alessandro handled the situation with diplomatic ease. Jessica is valued at Marchetti Publishing. We take care of our people. He retrieved his coat. I should go. You'll want family time. He turned to Jessica. Take the time you need. Your job's safe. As he headed for the door, Jessica called after him. Alessandro? He turned back. Thank you. For everything. He nodded once, then left the room. Barbara immediately turned to her daughter, Jessica Claire Parker. What is going on? The nurse said your husband had been here all night, and now your boss shows up with lunch and helping with breastfeeding. And where is Michael, the baby's father? Jessica closed her eyes briefly, the weight of everything crashing down. It's complicated, Mom. Uncomplicated for us, her father said, his voice gentle but firm. Over the next hour, Jessica told her parents everything. About Donovan abandoning her, about accidentally texting her boss, about Alessandro showing up at the hospital and being mistaken for Lily's father. By the end, Barbara was wiping away tears and Alan's jaw was clenched in anger toward the man who had abandoned his daughter. So this Marchetti, he just came to check on you? Barbara asked. That seems unusual. Everything about this situation is unusual, Mom, Jessica sighed. But he was kind when he didn't have to be. Alan was still processing. What kind of man doesn't stand by the mother of his child? You won't meet him, Jessica said firmly. He made his choice. Lily and I will be fine without him. Later that evening, after her parents had gone to their hotel, promising to return first thing in the morning, Jessica received a text from Alessandro. Is there anything you need that I can bring tomorrow? My sister suggested nursing tops might be helpful. Jessica smiled at the unexpected thoughtfulness. She hesitated, then replied, That's very kind, but my parents are here now. I should be fine. Thank you again for everything. His response came quickly. Good. The offer stands regardless. This isn't just professional courtesy. Jessica stared at those last words, wondering what exactly they meant. As she looked down at Lily, sleeping peacefully in the hospital bassinet, she couldn't help but compare the two Michaels in her life. One who had run from responsibility, and one who had run towards someone in need, even when it wasn't his responsibility at all. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, or how she would face Alessandro Marchetti when she eventually returned to work. But for the first time since learning she was pregnant, Jessica felt like maybe, just maybe, everything might turn out all right. 6 weeks after Lily's birth, Jessica stood in front of her bathroom mirror, smoothing her blouse and scrutinizing her reflection. Today marked her first day back at Marchetti Publishing, and her stomach churned with anxiety. Her parents had returned to Arizona 2 weeks ago, leaving her to navigate new motherhood alone. Though they had offered to stay longer or have her move back home with them, Jessica had declined. Boston was her home now, and she was determined to make it work. She checked on Lily one last time before the babysitter arrived. The infant was sleeping peacefully, unaware of her mother's inner turmoil. Jessica had interviewed 5 different sitters before settling on Nancy, a retired nurse with decades of child care experience. Still, leaving Lily felt like ripping off a limb. You can do this, Jessica whispered to herself as she gathered her purse and the breast pump she'd need during the day. Thousands of working mothers do this every day. When Jessica stepped off the elevator onto the editorial floor of Marchetti Publishing, several colleagues greeted her with warm smiles and congratulations. Her desk was decorated with balloons and a small gift basket. The normalcy of it all was comforting, as if her world hadn't completely transformed in the past few months. Jessica, welcome back, Tara, a fellow editor, enveloped her in a hug. We've missed you around here. How's the baby? She's perfect, Jessica smiled, pulling out her phone to show photos of Lily. She's gorgeous, Tara gushed. Those eyes. Jessica beamed with pride. Thanks, it's been quite the adjustment, but we're figuring it out. Tara lowered her voice. So, any word from the father? Jessica tensed. Few people at work knew the full story of her situation. No, and I don't expect any. Tara squeezed her arm sympathetically. His loss. You're amazing, and that baby is lucky to have you. As Jessica settled at her desk, she tried not to think about the last time she had seen Alessandro Marchetti. He had visited the hospital once more before she was discharged, bringing a car seat that his sister had insisted was the safest model available. The gesture had left Jessica both touched and confused. Since then, their communication had been limited to a few professional emails about her return to work. Jessica had just opened her first manuscript of the day when her phone buzzed with a text from Nancy. Lily won't take the bottle. She's been crying for 30 minutes. Any suggestions? A wave of panic washed over Jessica. She had practiced bottle feeding with Lily, but the baby had been inconsistent in her acceptance. Before she could respond, a shadow fell across her desk. Looking up, she found Alessandro Marchetti standing there, as imposing as ever in his dark, tailored suit. "Welcome back, Miss Parker," he said, his voice professionally distant. "Hope you're settling in well." "Yes, thank you, Mr. Marchetti," Jessica replied quickly, locking her phone screen. "It's good to be back." Alessandro nodded. "I've adjusted your project load for the next few weeks. You'll handle the Thompson manuscript exclusively until you're ready for more." "I appreciate that," Jessica said, surprised by the consideration. "My office at 2, to discuss your thoughts on it," he said, then walked away without waiting for a response. Jessica stared after him, puzzled by his return to formality after the personal connection they had shared in the hospital. It was as if those moments had never happened. By noon, Jessica was in the mother's room, pumping breast milk and frantically texting Nancy, who had finally gotten Lily to take the bottle after nearly 2 hours of resistance. The baby was now sleeping, exhausted from her protest. Jessica felt tears stinging her eyes. How was she supposed to focus on work when her heart was at home with her daughter? At 2 sharp, Jessica knocked on Alessandro's office door, manuscript notes in hand. "Come in," his deep voice called. The office was nothing like a modern corporate space. Dark wood paneling, shelves lined with leather-bound books, a heavy desk that looked like it had seen generations. The lighting was amber and low, casting long shadows. It smelled faintly of old leather and something else, something like cedar. Alessandro was standing by the window, gazing out at the Boston skyline. He turned as she entered, his expression unreadable. "Jessica," he said, using her first name despite their earlier formal exchange. "Sit." Jessica took a seat across from his desk, placing her notes between them. "I've reviewed the Thompson manuscript. It has potential, but the middle section drags considerably." Alessandro didn't sit or reach for her notes. Instead, he remained standing, studying her face with that penetrating gaze. "You've been crying." Jessica blinked in surprise. "I'm fine." "You're not fine," he stated simply. "What's wrong?" The direct question, asked with what seemed like genuine concern, broke through Jessica's carefully constructed professional facade. "Lily wouldn't take the bottle this morning," she admitted. "She cried for hours. The sitter finally got her to eat, but—" She trailed off, embarrassed by her emotional response. Alessandro's expression softened slightly. "That must be difficult." "It is what it is," Jessica said, trying to regain her composure. "Many working mothers deal with this. Now, about the manuscript." "Jessica," Alessandro interrupted gently, "may I speak frankly?" She nodded, uncertain. "When my sister returned to work and after having her first child, she was miserable for months," he said, moving to sit behind his desk. "She tried to pretend everything was fine. It nearly broke her." Jessica swallowed hard. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying perhaps we need to reconsider your return plan." He leaned back in his chair. "What if you could work from home 3 days a week? You'd come in for necessary meetings, but otherwise manage your projects remotely." Jessica stared at him. Would that be possible?" "We've never had such an arrangement before," Alessandro admitted. "But there's always a first time. You're a valuable editor, Jessica. I'd rather accommodate your needs than lose your talent." "Why would you do this for me?" Jessica asked, the question that had been plaguing her for weeks finally escaping her lips. Alessandro was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was steady but carried an undercurrent of pain. 6 years ago, my wife died giving birth to our son. He lived for 3 hours. I held them both as they slipped away. Jessica gasped softly. Alessandro, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. Few people know, he said. I don't discuss it. He looked directly at her. When I received your text that night, when I realized you were alone at such a critical moment, I couldn't not respond. The revelation stunned Jessica into silence. Suddenly, his appearance at the hospital, his gentle handling of Lily, his sister's advice about breastfeeding, it all made sense. This wasn't just professional courtesy or random kindness. This was a man who understood loss and isolation in a way few others could. I didn't mean to burden you with my history, Alessandro continued when she didn't speak. I simply wanted you to understand that my offer comes from genuine concern, not strategy. Jessica nodded, still processing this new information. Thank you for telling me, and for the offer. I'd like to try the arrangement if you prefer serious. I am, he confirmed. We'll start next week. For the remainder of this week, wrap up what you need here and prepare to work from home. Relief washed over Jessica. Thank you, Alessandro. This means more than I can express. As she stood to leave, Alessandro spoke again. Jessica, there's something else. He hesitated, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. I received a letter yesterday, addressed to the company. It was from Michael Donovan. Jessica froze, her hand gripping the back of the chair. What? Why would he contact Marsetti Publishing? It seems he's been trying to reach you. Your number changed. Your old apartment has new tenants. He tracked you to your employer. Alessandro's jaw tightened slightly. He claims he wants to meet his daughter. The room seemed to tilt around Jessica. After 6 months of silence, after telling me to take care of the problem, now he wants to play daddy? You don't have to see him, Alessandro said firmly. You owe him nothing. What did the letter say exactly? Jessica asked, her voice shaking slightly. Alessandro reached into his desk drawer and pulled out an envelope. Read it yourself, I haven't responded. Jessica took the letter, her fingers trembling. Michael Donovan's handwriting was as familiar as it was now unwelcome. The letter was brief, expressing regret for his hasty reaction and claiming he had been searching his soul during his months away. He wanted to meet Lily and discuss support arrangements. Support arrangements? Jessica repeated bitterly. Now that she's here, healthy and real, he wants to swoop in and play the hero. She looked up at Alessandro. What do you think I should do? Alessandro leaned back in his chair. That's not for me to say, but I will offer this. Sometimes people deserve second chances. Sometimes they don't. Jessica folded the letter and slipped it into her pocket. I need time to think about this. Take all the time you need, Alessandro said. And Jessica, whatever you decide, you're not alone in this anymore. The words hung between them, laden with meaning beyond professional support. For the first time since Lily's birth, Jessica felt a flutter of something other than anxiety or exhaustion, something warm and unexpected that made her breath catch. That evening, as Jessica rocked Lily to sleep, her thoughts kept returning to Alessandro Marsetti, to his revelation, his kindness, his unexpected support. The man she was coming to know was vastly different from the intimidating figure she had once feared. And as for the other Michael, the one who had broken her heart and abandoned his child, she pulled out the letter again, reading it more carefully. Between the lines of Donovan's carefully worded apology, Jessica sensed calculation rather than genuine remorse. He mentioned legal rights and paternal claims alongside his desire to meet Lily. The implicit threat was clear. If Jessica didn't cooperate, he might pursue other avenues to insert himself into their lives. Jessica's arms tightened protectively around her sleeping daughter. How quickly life could change. In 6 months, she had gone from a woman betrayed and alone to a mother fiercely determined to protect her child, with unexpected allies in her corner. Whatever Michael Donovan's true motives were, whatever challenges lay ahead, one thing was certain. Jessica Parker was no longer facing them alone. 3 days later, Jessica sat in a quiet corner of Riverside Cafe, her hands wrapped tightly around a mug of tea that had long gone cold. Across from her, Michael Donovan fidgeted with his napkin, his once familiar face now seeming like that of a stranger. She has your eyes, Jessica said finally, sliding a photo of Lily across the table. She had deliberately chosen to meet him without bringing her daughter. Whatever his intentions, Lily would not be part of this initial conversation. Michael picked up the photo, studying it with an expression Jessica couldn't quite read. "She's beautiful," he murmured. "Jessica, I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but—" "You're right," she interrupted, her voice steady. "You don't have any right. You made that choice when you walked away." He had the decency to look ashamed. "I was scared, unprepared. I handled it terribly, and I'm sorry." "Why now?" Jessica asked, the question that had kept her awake for nights. "Why after all this time?" Michael Donovan shifted uncomfortably. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about family, about responsibility. My brother just had a kid, and seeing him with his son—" He trailed off. "I realized what I was missing, what I threw away." Jessica studied the man she had once thought she loved. His explanation sounded rehearsed, hollow. "And the mentions of legal rights in your letter, was that thinking about family too?" His expression hardened slightly. "I'm Lily's father. I have rights." "Rights you forfeited when you suggested I take care of the problem," Jessica reminded him, her voice cold. "Rights aren't just legal concepts, Michael. They're earned through presence, through care, through showing up when it matters." Before he could respond, Jessica's phone buzzed with a text. She glanced down to see a message from Alessandro. "Everything all right?" A small smile touched her lips. Since their conversation in his office, Alessandro had been a steady presence in her life. Professional yet personal, respectful of boundaries yet unfailingly supportive. He had never pushed or presumed, simply offered quiet strength when she needed it most. "Someone important?" Donovan asked, noting her expression. "Yes," Jessica said simply, returning her attention to him. "Look, I won't keep Lily from knowing her father if you're genuinely committed to being in her life. But I need to know your true intentions. No games, no threats." Donovan's facade cracked slightly. "I'm not the villain you're making me out to be. I panicked, yes. I made a terrible mistake, but I want to make it right." He leaned forward. "And I've been thinking about us too, Jess. What we had was good. Maybe we could—" "No," Jessica cut him off firmly. "That door is closed permanently." His expression darkened. "Is there someone else?" Jessica didn't answer directly. "My priority is Lily. If you want to be in her life, we'll need a formal agreement. Visitation schedule, support payments, everything documented legally." "You don't trust me," he observed. "You haven't earned trust," she replied evenly. "But I'm willing to give you the chance to build it, for Lily's sake." After Donovan left, Jessica remained at the cafe, emotions swirling. She picked up her phone and texted Alessandro. "Meeting finished. Could use a friend." 20 minutes later, Alessandro Marchetti walked through the cafe door, his tall figure commanding attention even in casual dark clothing. He spotted Jessica and made his way to her table, sliding into the seat across from her. "How did it go?" he asked without preamble. Jessica recounted the conversation, watching Alessandro's expression darken when she mentioned Donovan's suggestion about rekindling their relationship. "And what will you do now?" Alessandro asked when she finished. "I'll have my lawyer draft a visitation and support agreement," Jessica said. "Limited visits at first, supervised, until he proves he can be consistent." Alessandro nodded. "A sensible approach." He hesitated, then added, "And about his other suggestion?" Jessica met his gaze directly. "As I told him, that door is closed permanently." Something shifted in Alessandro's eyes. Relief, perhaps, or something more. "Jessica," he began, then stopped, seeming to search for words. "Over these past weeks, I've come to—" "I know," Jessica said softly. "Me too." Their hands found each other across the table, a simple touch that somehow felt more intimate than any words could express. 6 months later, the autumn leaves had turned Boston into a canvas of red and gold. Jessica stood in her kitchen, preparing dinner, while Lily played in her high chair, babbling happily as she explored a set of colorful blocks. The sound of a key in the lock made them both look up. "Da!" Lily squealed, her favorite new word. Alessandro Marchetti entered, his serious work expression immediately melting into a warm smile at the sight of them. He hung his coat carefully and crossed to Lily, lifting her into his arms with practiced ease. "Hello, princess," he murmured, kissing her chubby cheek. "Did you have a good day with Mama?" Jessica watched them, her heart full. The past year had brought changes she could never have imagined. Michael Donovan had kept his monthly visitations for about 3 months before his interest waned and his visits became increasingly sporadic. His last cancellation had come with a job offer in Seattle and a request to modify the agreement to quarterly visits at best. Meanwhile, Alessandro had become a constant in their lives, first as a supportive friend, then as something more. Their relationship had developed slowly, both of them careful not to rush given the complexities involved. But the connection between them had been undeniable from that first night in the hospital, a bond forged in crisis that had deepened into something genuine and lasting. "How was your meeting?" Jessica asked as Alessandro came to kiss her, Lily still balanced on his hip. "Productive. The expansion's approved," he replied. "But more importantly, I had a thought on the way home." He set Lily back in her high chair and reached into his pocket, producing a small velvet box. "This isn't how I planned to do this. I had elaborate ideas involving the place we first met properly, the hospital." Jessica laughed, tears already forming in her eyes. "But I realize," Alessandro continued, opening the box to reveal a ring, "that the perfect moment isn't about location. It's about being with the people who make life worth living." He knelt beside her. "Jessica Parker, will you and Lily do me the honor of becoming my family? Officially, permanently?" The ring was unique, clearly custom-made. Jessica recognized elements of another piece, melted down and reformed into something new. His late wife's ring, transformed but not forgotten, a symbol of moving forward while honoring the past. Jessica looked from the ring to Alessandro's hopeful face to Lily, who was watching them with bright, curious eyes. Her daughter, who had inadvertently brought this remarkable man into their lives through a mistaken text message on a rainy night that seemed both yesterday and a lifetime ago. "Yes," Jessica whispered, her voice catching. "Yes, yelled to family, yes to us." As Alessandro slipped the ring onto her finger and gathered both her and Lily into his embrace, Jessica marveled at life's unexpected turns, how the worst moments could lead to the best, how mistakes could become miracles, and how finding love could be as simple and as profound as sending a message to the right wrong person.